The first thing you should know is that I didn't choose this job. It chose me. Or maybe it was waiting for me all along, watching from the shadows, biding its time until desperation consumed me. If I had known what I was signing up for, I would have burned that contract and run as far as my legs could carry me. But hindsight is a cruel companion in hell. It started on a cold November night. My dark tourism business, once thriving, had become a sinking ship. Fewer people wanted to pay for guided tours of abandoned asylums, cursed forests, or forgotten battlefields. The bills were piling up, the phone hadn't rung in weeks, and my landlord was threatening eviction. I sat alone in my office, the dim light of my desk lamp casting long shadows on the peeling wallpaper, when the door creaked open without warning. A woman stepped inside. She didn't knock, didn't announce herself, just walked in like she owned the place. Her presence sucked the air out of the room. She was tall and elegant, dressed in a black suit that seemed to absorb the dim light around her. Her hair was flame red, cascading over her shoulders like blood spilled across silk sheets. But it was her eyes that froze me in place, emerald green but unnaturally sharp, like they could see straight into my soul. "You're Alex Harper," she said. It wasn't a question. I nodded, too startled to speak. "I have an offer for you," she continued, her voice smooth as velvet but carrying an edge that made my skin crawl. "A new kind of tour, exclusive clients, immense profit." "Who are you?" I managed to stammer. She smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of her lips that revealed teeth just a little too sharp. "You can call me Lily." "And what kind of tour are we talking about?" Her smile widened further, revealing something predatory beneath her beauty. The kind that takes people beyond. I should have thrown her out right then and there, but desperation makes fools of us all. She leaned forward and placed a contract on my desk, thick parchment covered in spidery black script that seemed to writhe when I tried to read it. "What's the catch?" I asked. "There's always a price," she said cryptically. "But think of what you'll gain. Wealth beyond your wildest dreams, power, purpose. And if I say no?" Her eyes darkened, and for a moment, the room seemed to tilt around me. "You don't want to say no." Against every instinct screaming at me to stop, I picked up the pen she offered, a quill dripping with ink so red it could only be blood, and signed my name at the bottom of the contract. The moment the quill left the page, everything changed. The first tour came 2 days later. I received an email with instructions. Meet the clients at an abandoned train station on the outskirts of town at midnight. No names were given, just coordinates and a warning. Do not be late. When I arrived at the station under a moonless sky, 3 figures were waiting for me. A man in his 60s with hollow eyes and trembling hands. A young woman clutching a rosary so tightly her knuckles were white. And a teenage boy who looked like he'd stepped out of a punk rock magazine but whose bravado couldn't hide his fear. None of them spoke as I led them onto the platform. The train arrived moments later, a monstrous thing of black iron and glowing red windows that hissed steam like it was alive. The doors opened with a groan that sounded almost like a scream. "This is your ride," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. They hesitated but eventually boarded one by one. As soon as they were inside, Lily appeared beside me out of thin air. "Good job," she purred. "Now it's your turn." "My turn for what?" I asked warily. "To guide them." Before I could protest, she shoved me onto the train with impossible strength. The doors slammed shut behind me with a finality that made my stomach drop. The train plunged into darkness as it roared forward at impossible speed. The windows showed nothing but swirling shadows that pressed against the glass like living things trying to get in. The passengers sat stiffly in their seats, their fear palpable in the stifling air. Then came the whispers, soft at first, like wind through dead leaves, but growing louder until they filled the car with an unbearable cacophony. "Do you hear that?" the young woman whispered shakily. Before I could answer, the lights flickered and died. For several agonizing seconds we were plunged into pitch blackness, and then they came back on. The old man was gone. His seat was empty except for his hat lying there as if he'd simply vanished into thin air. "What's happening?" the teenage boy demanded, his voice cracking with panic. "I don't know," I admitted truthfully. But even as I said it, I felt something watching us from just beyond the edge of sight. The train screeched to a halt in what looked like an endless wasteland of ash and bone under a blood-red sky. A sign outside read, "Welcome to the Borderlands." "Everyone off," came Lily's voice over an unseen intercom system. The doors opened with another groan, and we had no choice but to step out onto cracked earth that smelled of sulfur and decay. Distant screams echoed across the barren landscape like ghosts trapped between worlds. "What is this place?" the young woman asked tearfully. "The Borderlands," I said grimly, though I had no idea how those words came to my lips. They felt planted there by something else entirely. As we walked forward through this hellish wasteland filled with jagged rocks and pools of bubbling tar-like liquid, grotesque shapes began emerging from shadows, twisted creatures with too many limbs or faces stitched together from nightmares. They watched us hungrily but didn't approach. Yet. We reached what looked like an ancient stone archway carved with symbols that made my head throb just looking at them. Symbols older than language itself, and dripping with malice. Beyond it lay utter darkness, a void so complete it seemed to consume light itself, and standing before it was Lily herself, now dressed in robes blacker than midnight stars extinguished forevermore. "This is where your journey ends," she declared coldly, turning towards the group whose terror now reached crescendo heights beyond mortal comprehension. One by one, shadowed figures emerged from nowhere and dragged the passengers toward the archway. The young woman screamed as she was pulled away, her rosary slipping from her grasp. The teenage boy tried to run but didn't make it far before more shadows descended upon him like vultures on carrion. Only then did Lily turn back to me. "And you," she said softly but menacingly. "You're not just their guide. You're their replacement." "What are you talking about?" I asked shakily as dread coiled around my heart like icy fingers. She stepped closer until her face was inches from mine. Her breath smelled of smoke and rot. "Every tour needs a guide," she whispered mockingly before shoving me toward the archway herself. As I stumbled into its suffocating darkness and felt countless unseen hands clawing at my flesh, I realized too late what she meant. There would always be another tour, another group, another guide trapped forever in this hellish cycle, and now it's my turn to wait for you. Days passed, or what felt like days, in that eternal darkness. I lost all sense of time, trapped in a never-ending nightmare where every moment was a struggle to survive. The darkness was alive, crawling over me like a living entity, whispering unspeakable horrors in my ear until my mind began to unravel. Then, suddenly, I was back in my office. The room was unchanged, except for a single sheet of paper on my desk with a new set of instructions. Another tour was scheduled, and I had no choice but to comply, forever bound to this role of Hell's tour guide.